So there, as soon as everyone's go.
Yeah, in the room, we'll. Oh, the recording is happening. Tabidi, we're gonna turn it over to you. You're at the bottom of our screen, so you're kind of behind the chair, but we can see you.
Okay.
Just
All
speak
right.
loudly.
Okay, can everyone hear me? I hope you can. Good morning. My name is Tabidi Lewis. I'd like to call this meeting to order on the 8th of June, 2023 of the Youth Development Council. And welcome you all here today. And I'd like to begin, if we can begin with a roll call. So.
Thanks, Tabidi.
Thanks, Tabidi. Forgot about that. So, can you hear me okay?
Yeah. So Melissa, you'll run through the roll call?
Great, I am.
Okay.
Zan Ojero.
Present.
Eric Cardella.
Present.
Parasa Chanrami.
Here.
Janine Hartley.
Here.
Celeste Jansen. Robin Johnson. Andy Leonard.
Here.
Tabidi Lewis.
You said present, but you didn't.
Adrian Livingston.
Here.
Present.
Christina McMahon.
Here.
Maricela Ortega Guzman. We know she's on her way. Jeff Parker.
Present.
Molly Rogers. Molly is also on her way, I believe. Or sorry, she's gonna be attending virtually, popping in and out. Diana Rojas. Andy Santana May. Karen Spencer. I need to join later. Janelle Theobald.
Here.
Liz Thorne.
Here. Good morning.
Good morning. Koi Vu. Kiwi Wilson. Okay, that's it. Check our form numbers. Back to BD, or are we gonna?
Tabidi.
Okay, thank you. So the first item that we have on the agenda, we're a little behind. We apologize. It's the State Advisory Group and Juvenile Justice Committee updates. The committee chairs and YDD staff will move us through this portion, please.
So Molly is not here yet, so let me take that. I've been hiding behind Lawrence. We made a deal that I'm gonna right behind him here.
Oh, sorry, no, I was pointing to
Oh.
Robin. She's gonna sit there. Tanya, you can stay where you are.
I'm back to Mr.
You stay where you are.
Sit here quietly.
Welcome.
I'll stay here.
Yeah, you're good.
Safe spot here. So the Juvenile Justice Committee started the review of the juvenile crime prevention plans. I'm gonna say in April when all the plans came in. There were a few extensions granted, but most of the work from the review started in April and still is continuing, and we'll get to that in a moment. So all counties, all 36 counties submitted their plans, all 9 tribes submitted their plans, so the plans were reviewed both by committee members, by the staff, and MPC research. We've been doing a lot of work with the tribes for the last 20 years. And I will ask Christina to kind of fill you on the work on the committee has done. I'd also like to ask Lawrence to share a couple of words and thoughts on the review of what is known as question 6. Each county was asked to describe how they have reviewed, assessed, and understand disproportionality within their juvenile justice system if found, and if found, how they can address that and provide culturally specific services for the youth as well as specific services for LGBTQ+ youth. So that was is known as question 6, just because the way the plans were structured, we followed the statutes, what's required in the statute that needs to be addressed in the plan. And there is a policy decision by this council that we need to address disproportionality we have found. So Lawrence did the review of the question 6 primarily. And there was some feedback to some counties, so don't say a couple of words before you're hiding now behind me.
Yeah, so I reviewed the JCP plans, and in particular, the cultural inclusion piece as well. And in that, all 36 counties responded. There were some technical advisement given to about 4 of them. All 3 of those were met except one. I'm still working with one in particular, but that will be rectified, and they will also submit all the information that they need concerning the cultural appropriateness piece. There was 3 sections to the cultural appropriateness piece. Just how do you define your cultural practices to address the needs of all youth being served, the racial and ethnic disparities that exist in the data to support that, as well as the LGBTQ plus area. Those are the 3 core areas that we kind of focused on and wanted to have the county JCP plans reflect those areas and the work that they're doing in that and the progress that they're making, or at least an attempt to start working in those areas and follow up on some of the resources available to them. Again, all 36 counties appropriately responded to that area, to that requirement. Did work with a few, 3 of them have come on board. I'm working with one last individual one, and that too will rectify itself and be available for them moving forward as well.
Thank you, Lawrence. So Chris,
Okay, is it all right to
of course.
pose questions? Eric Cardella, thank you, Lawrence and Anya, for that update. Could you speak, Lawrence, to how do we measure success in that area? Is it a yes, no, like culturally appropriate or not, or are there other measures that we would use to assess?
Well, it's a combination of things, because cultural appropriateness is it's such a it can be such a subjective conversation, conceptual, theoretical conversation. So we look at just the number of people who are of a diverse background other than your typical known white child, and what services are afforded to those individuals, whether it's culturally respectful to tribal and native individuals, African Americans, Latinx, LGBTQ, what services are specifically geared towards them to allow inclusion, and how many participants are in those services. What type of training does the staff have? What type of direction is the department going in concerning those areas? So all those things are taken into consideration as far as measurements, the amount of people involved, the type of staff that you have working for you, the training that they've received, the data, the relative rate index, are those numbers reflective in the type of treatment that's being received? And can we see reduction in those areas with those groups of individuals? So that's how we measure that. Yes, we are involved in it, but yes, also we're making improvements because the reduction in the RII is evident because of the practices that we are participating in.
Great, thank you.
Well, I would like to just share some observations because I'm on the Juvenile Justice Committee and I'm one of the folks who was assigned a group of county plans to review. I've been doing this a while. I used to be on the original Juvenile Crime Prevention Advisory Committee before the YDC existed, so I don't really like to date myself. Like, I won't say how many trees on the ring that is, but on the rings on the tree that is, but I have to say I was beyond pleasantly surprised at what I saw this year. So I was assigned 5 plans to review and provide comments for, but the way the folks at the YDC, the wonderful staff that worked on this, set up the smart sheet, they made it even more user-friendly for this year. Christine approved it, so thank you. But we had the ability to access all 36 plans and take a look at them. So just because I got excited after I read my 5, and I was like, wow, big improvement this year. And then I started looking at some other plans, and it was inspiring to see what's going on around the state, and I really think it's a combination of reasons for this time. So the last go around 2 years ago was difficult, but it led to out of chaos, brilliance is born. I think it forced folks in juvenile departments to really take a look at a different way, and that wouldn't have happened without all the technical assistance and the sometimes difficult conversations that had to happen. And I just really want to give a shout out to Lawrence. Have you been here like since December or January?
Well, I visited in December.
It's like Lawrence is everywhere. I mean, he's been very actively engaged with the juvenile departments around the state and showing up at all our meetings. People are reaching out to you. We in Clackamas County invited Lawrence to attend our lipstick. Lawrence was there when we presented our plan. But then we said, hey, we want to monopolize your time some more. Can you come to Clackamas and do an all-day training with us on how to better support LGBTQ plus youth? So, and you came and hung out, got to meet some of the folks in Clackamas County. So I really think Anya's commitment, Lawrence's commitment, it's having a major impact. So when I say having a major impact, the differences that I saw were, you talked about the 3 areas, Lawrence, the data, people actually looking at their data. It seemed like there was better understanding of what these relative rate index reports that we get through JAGES mean. Putting in other sources of data, some of them did, that went beyond just the black and white relative rate index report. That was a big improvement because last time there was, in some of the plans, there was barely a mention, or it would only cover one group and it didn't talk about how things were playing out for different groups. Last go round, I would say the LGBTQ plus conversation was almost non-existent. There were a handful of plans that addressed young people and those people being served that have various needs. And I was so blown away at the difference. I really tune into that. I'm the mother of a transgender daughter, so I've got a special I'm tuning in to see what people are saying, and it was really disappointing to me last year. I don't mean to sound judgy, but it was night and day compared to this year. So and then the other piece that I saw was talking about intersectionality. There was I'm not going to name any names, but I remember reading one plan and they were talking about, hey, we really need to think about how we're serving gender diverse people. We want to do a gender specific program for youth who identify as female. But they were also talking about some of the ways that intersected with cultural aspects related to race in their community. And I was just like, wow, this is like, this is going from, I don't want to give letter grades, but I saw a lot of A's. I won't say what the range was, but it's like going from this to a lot of really thoughtful A+ or A range work. And I don't think that would have happened without the support of folks on this team and really getting the work you've done to make it easier for people to access help and not feel ashamed to access help. And I think that's been, honestly, I think that's part of the problem. So has been part of the problem, that's my opinion. But just really can't thank you enough for the amount of time you all put in, your staff put into reviewing it, Brian. It's, I really think it's gonna make a difference in how we serve kids. And it's really got the conversation going on a much more regular basis at the tables, which you've been at the table when discussions are going on with the juvenile directors. So anyway, sorry, I don't want to monopolize the entire agenda time, but I gotta be honest, it was a chore last year, like, oh, this is painful. It was a chore. And for me to finish doing mine and say, wow, I want to see what else is out here. And it was, and I gotta be honest, I looked at some of the folks that we knew struggled last year. Those are the ones that I said, okay, I'm gonna do some extras. and I was really excited by what I saw. So anyway, now if you all want to have access and look at all 36 plans, and I'm sure Brian would let you do that, but that's my humble assessment of how things, so.
Well, thank
And
you.
I would say,
Awesome job.
the other thing I wanted to add from the meeting is, I think where we landed, and you kind of already covered this, Lawrence, but without getting into the approval process, I think the recommendation basically was, everybody turned them in, everybody, worked on, did the work, and then there's some fine tuning. You said you worked with 4
Yes.
different counties, and there's one that you're still working with, but I don't know if it's the time for this, but I know we only meet as a group every 3 months, so I would recommend that we approve the plans, because I think we can have a high level of trust that Lawrence and others will make sure that we get that last one finalized with the edits you're gonna be working with them on. Yeah,
Thank
so
you,
anyway,
Christina.
that's
Just to
my
add
piece.
to that a little bit, well, one thing, really appreciate all the hard work that the committee members put into it. Because that's a lot of reading, it's a lot of analyzing, and it's really time consuming. And the Juvenile Justice Committee has been meeting monthly for years, so it's a lot of commitment and huge appreciation. And knowing what hard work it is, Maricela joined the committee just recently. So there was a lot of enthusiasm around this work as well, and the need for the youth. But what was also happening at the meeting on Monday was the decision that the committee was getting to was to recommend all 36 county plans and all 9 tribal plans for approval today by the YDC, because that's the decision that needs to be made according to statute by this group. And then we will continue fine tuning with the couple of counties and a couple of tribes that need additional support. And the committee will meet in July, second Monday of July, to finalize the review process. But the ask of this group is to approve the plans as submitted and reviewed, and allow the Juvenile Justice Committee to complete their work. I cannot make a motion, I'm just hoping that somebody else would.
Well, I'll make that motion.
Okay,
What I said. So it's to approve all 36 county plans and the 9 tribal plans, was what my motion is.
Good motion.
I'll second that, Ogeron.
Great, ready to take a roll call vote? Okay.
Are we good with,
Yes, we are at quorum, thank you everyone, and since I took roll call, Maricela has joined us in person. So I'll take the vote. Zan Ojero.
Aye.
Eric Cardella.
Aye.
Parasa Chanrami.
Aye.
Janine Hartley.
Aye.
Celeste Jansen. Robin Johnson. Andy Leonard.
aye,
Tabidi Lewis.
aye.
Adrian Livingston.
did I hit her?
And Natalie, she's here. Christina McMahon.
Aye.
Maricela Ortega Guzman.
Aye.
Jeff Parker.
Jeff Parker votes aye.
Molly Rogers. Diana Rojas. Andy Santana May. Karen Spencer hasn't joined yet, I think. Janelle Theobald.
Aye.
Liz Thorne.
I vote yes.
Koi Vu. PB Wilson.
Okay,
And that's enough votes. To pass.
okay, I have a question. There are 2 parts to this, if I'm incorrect. The vote in establishing the minimum grant amount, or was that, I couldn't hear if someone made that motion and folded all that in together?
Well, we did not get to this discussion, so another responsibility of the council is to establish a minimum grant allocation for the funding, and I'll ask Brian and Cory to help me here with that, but our budget has not been approved or finalized. So it's a little early for us to make an informed decision what the minimum grant amount might be. we may need to table it maybe until the next meeting.
Yeah.
But right now, we're extending the current grant agreements with counties and tribes through the next biennium for the same amount that have been appropriated in the current biennium. Please help me out here.
Yeah, I think Anya, you said it, and given the fact that the larger department budget hasn't yet been approved, and that's as a result of the kind of standstill in the legislature and the walkout. So we don't have the ability to come to you with a new minimum grant award. I think the minimum JCP award was around 63.
63.
And with a new budget, we probably would have adjusted that up a little bit, but we just don't have that information yet. So we'll bring that to you when we can.
Do we need council motion or approval to extend that amount into the next biennium? No.
Thanks.
Okay.
All right. Was there one more item for JJC, Molly, or no?
And maybe in the interest of time, we should keep moving, just because we have a bit of time to keep up. I know that folks went to the Coalition for Juvenile Justice Conference, and that was fantastic and meaningful. And there was also an OJDP, Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, convening that happened a couple of weeks ago. But again, in the interest of time, I think those, just know that those went well. We had great attendance and meetings, and you know, folks from Clackamas County were on site presenting, and we got to meet with a number of Oregon's federal delegation, and so that
Okay.
went really well.
All right. With that said, Cord and Brian, Legislative Policy and Strategies Planning Update.
Perfect, thanks Tabidi. I think I'm gonna turn it over to Cord. Cord's got a PowerPoint that I think he'll be sharing. So for those in the room, I want to direct your eyes towards the screen. Those virtually, you should have this, and maybe Melissa, are you gonna pull it up to share it? I'm not sure who's doing what.
Cord, is it me or you? I don't have it.
I have it ready to go, so I can share it.
Excellent. Thank you, Cord.
Let's see here.
We can.
No, that's not what I wanted. Sorry. Hi, everybody. Cord Bucher, Deputy Director YDD for the record. Just trying to get the slideshow fired up. I hit a button that went somewhere really strange. So I'm going to try that again. I have not used PowerPoint live, but it was not what I thought it was. I was like, is that live? Yeah, this is live. We're doing it live, but actually a special feature. So bear with me for just 1 minute.
Are we on Zoom?
We're on Zoom. The last Zoom update made it so that when you go to share your screen, all of the other things that you've been looking at disappear. And it's very unnerving, so maybe that's what happened before. To hunt to be able to see everyone's cameras.
I just did a new button. I'll probably be with something else. What did we go here? You should now see it.
There you go.
Yeah, coming up, Cord. Thank you.
Terrific. All right, thanks for your patience. I'm going to move us along here. Okay, I'll start with the legislative update. There's a outcome of 2023 session remains uncertain. Folks have probably at least seen some of the coverage of the current legislative session. I won't get into all of that, but we'll just tell you about right now what we do know. And I'll stop for each of these slides. There's a lot of information. I'm happy to answer questions about this. So what we do know, our YDD statutory fixed bill, it passed the House. It passed its Senate committee, went to Senate Judiciary. I testified on it. It passed the committee. It's now holding at the Senate floor along with hundreds of other bills. The fate of that bill is uncertain. If the session were to resume, if work in the Senate resumed and the bill passed, it still has to go back to the House for a concurrence vote because we amended some language at the request of a few House members. it looks unlikely that the Senate is going to complete any work on this bill or any others possibly. So that one's kind of hanging out. It's a bummer because we were pretty excited about how it was going, how it was moving through the chambers. The Youth Development Division budget within the ODE budget that passed out of Ways and Means, the budget committees, as of last night, 5 p.m. The full Ways and Means Committee recommended it pass, but now it would have to go to each chamber for a floor vote. And again, if the Senate doesn't resume work, that won't happen. So we have a budget now, or we have a budget potentially that could pass and be signed by the governor. But if it does not pass, then we'll be looking at that budget again in the special session, and I will talk about that more on the next slide. Just wanted to mention also Senate Bill 421. This was the Youth Advisory Council bill. We've seen this bill in a few different forms over the years. It includes youth from a lot of different places, including Youth Development Council youth members or youth from our programs who might participate in this advisory body that would provide guidance to the Department of Education, Youth Development Division, and other state agencies. It's alive, but it's just not moving. It was sent over to a Ways and Means Committee back in April and nothing has happened. I actually need to check in with some folks at ODE and see if they know if it's going to go anywhere, but I think it's sort of stuck. I don't know for sure, but it did pass out of the Senate, so I think it's up to Ways and Means to work it. So I think it still could, something could happen with it, but I'm not sure why it's not moving. So that's what I know. I'm going to jump to the next slide, but I'll answer any questions about our bill or the budget.
Parsa, do you have any thoughts about that last one, maybe?
Yeah, so I've been working with youth leaders and student leaders on the bill, and I know there's still going to be an attempt to try to get a budget note. We know it won't be permanent, unfortunately, because with budget notes, it's usually one-time funding. So we at least got an estimate from the department. So we're kind of doing this final push to see if we can get it in the end of session budget bill. It's really hard to say, there's a lot of things moving, and it's hard to get a confirmation yea or nay whether or not something's going in there. I did have a question for you, and this might be a question for Cord, would be, so with the continuing resolution, oh, I'm seeing it now, okay, I'm gonna stop. I see it on the slide, okay. I think you're about to address my question, so I'll stop.
Hey, Jeff, I see your hand is up on the screen here.
Yeah, thanks. Just hopefully a really quick question. That YDD budget that went through the subcommittee on and now goes to Joint Ways and Means, is that a continued service level higher, the same, or lower than what we had in the last biennium? Like, are we cheering? Are we sad? Or where are we?
We'll get, that's actually the next slide after this one. So
Okay.
I'll hold your question. And yeah, so I'll start with the continuing resolution because that's what I think we are preparing for. We've been told to remain optimistic. However, we wanted to give everybody a little bit of background on what may happen if there is no budget passed by this legislative session. So state agencies, if no budget is passed, move into this continuing resolution or CR. There is a bill, I believe a bill like this is passed every session. It's meant to keep agencies funded if there is a delay in the governor signing their budget. So it's not really designed for this kind of scenario, but it's what we've got. So what the CR, continuing resolution, does is appropriate 1 quarter, 3 months of funding to agencies, and it authorizes an agency to spend that money through September 15th. So it gives us about enough money to operate through September, but permission to operate through the middle. If the legislature does not adopt a budget, then the governor will certainly call a special session for the legislature to come back and work on a budget. My understanding is that they would start with the budgets that were passed out of Ways and Means committees. So I So my sense is that what we see in our budget is what we would see worked in a special session, so we can more or less rely on those numbers, although things could change. But while we are waiting for a special session to start, and once we're in July, if there is no budget, this is how we're operating. Under the CR scenario, the division will continue operating as normal. Our work, the staff, operations continue, and we will proceed with our grant award processes. There are, of course, some complications in how we would structure agreements if we were still waiting for a final budget while we were making grant agreements. But the timeline is such that we'll announce awards. Ideally, getting close to the end of June, we'll have an award announcement. There's negotiation processes. At the point that we are actually creating grant agreements and sending those out for signatures, we would hopefully have a budget adopted. If we do not, then we do have funding to cover 1 quarter of grant activities. Continuing resolution doesn't include any new funds, or if we had a new program or new funding that was going to be in our budget, that wouldn't be included. However, YDD does not have any new programs or positions that would be impacted. We do have the Future Ready funds that are in the new budget, but those were already in our budget last biennium, so we would be authorized to do that work since we had it last biennium. The continuing resolution bases the allocation that you get on your previous biennium budget, so it doesn't actually impact Future Ready in a negative way because that was already there, as was the position. It's a very difficult scenario for a lot of agencies. It is not as difficult for YDD to maintain our operations if the CR comes to pass. 2 quick things I'll note is that the legislature has to pass a budget in order for agencies to have one. The governor can't unilaterally fund us. If there are difficulties getting a new budget passed, it's conceivable there could be another continuing resolution. My understanding is there's some historical precedent for that, where you just kind of keep getting resolutions until there is a budget. That would make it a little more stressful, but that's a possibility we'd have to also navigate. So I will pause and see if there are questions about the continuing resolution situation.
I have a question, Cord. This is Parsa. One question that I had in terms of seeing the continuing resolution scenario play out, does that impact the timing of when dollars would be released to grantees in any way? The reason why I'm asking that question is on the districts and ESD side of things, we're hearing that there may be some adjustments in terms of the amount of payments that would be released by the department, and I don't know what that looks like for the context of the YDD. So wanted to see if that impacts the flow of funding to grantees in any way and the timing of that.
Thanks for the question, Parsa. I mean, I think part of the thing for districts is that they're getting money upfront to start the school year from ODE, from the state school fund. Whereas our grants, we do have some startup funding available grants potentially, but most of our grants are reimbursement based. So in most cases, we're not actually dispersing funds until October for grants that start in July. There may be some who would be able to access funds earlier than that if they have requested startup funding. The portion of funds for startup funding could vary, but my sense is that it would still align with what we would expect to have available. I think that the complication would be that, and I'll actually go to the next slide, which shows you our budget. We have a slight increase. If you look at the bottom line, these are the total grant and aid amounts. The first 2 columns here show total grant and aid from last biennium. I'll explain all these in a moment, but just to note that the last column, the 2023-25 grant and aid, is what we are, didn't mean to do that. 38.6 million is what we are looking at in total grant funds that we would have available if our budget were adopted. But our, I believe that our, the funding levels that we would have in a continuing resolution would be based it would be more in line with the continuing service level, except that it would include Future Ready. So Future Ready is covered, But the continuing service level, if you broke it down to say like the community investment grants, we have more money for community investments in our new budget than we did in 21-23. Not a whole lot, but enough for one or two more grants than we made in the previous biennium. So we could be in a situation where we have conditional award numbers. We say, well, we can award this many grants based on the 21-23 budget and the continuing resolution amount when we know exactly how many dollars that would be. But we could actually have enough money when the budget is final to fund one or two more programs. It's kind of speculative because we just don't know exactly who we're awarding and how much they're requesting, but there's a slight difference in some of our grant fund amounts between what we'd see in a continuing resolution for one quarter versus what we would have in the new biennium for one quarter. I hope that makes sense. Like that's a bit in the weeds, but I think that's as best I can explain it. I guess to simplify it, there could be a situation where we tell a grantee, we can't currently fund your program, but if our budget is finalized, we might be able to, so please hold. That is a possibility based on the difference in the numbers.
Yeah. Just I'll get in the weeds with you, Cord. This is Eric. Do you anticipate that those decisions would be based on rankings from the reviewers, or would it be based on other factors like timing of deliverables?
I think like everything in terms of the awards process would align with what the RFA described. It's more that, when we're looking at our total funds available, we would have to, before we would go and make an award, we'd have to make sure that we had the dollars for it. And we might know how much we could award with a 23-25 budget, but we would have enough for one quarter of our 21-23 budget to start. So we might delay making an award to somebody. Like say the last one that is ranked to be funded, we might have a delay there is what I would anticipate.
Right.
We haven't actually worked through the mechanics of how we would navigate that exact situation, but just to sort of like, it's not quite the same giving all the money out right away. So we're not looking in July, if there's no budget, we're not scrambling to actually make dollars available, but we would be entering the agreement process, and that would be complicated.
Yes. That makes sense. Just for the record, since I don't believe we'll be meeting as a council before some of those decisions are happening, my recommendation, I guess, for what it's worth, I'm not making a motion, but just, editorializing, would be potentially make those decisions based on what makes sense for the grantees in terms of timing. For instance, if there's a program that begins with the, in the late fall in terms of their deliverables, maybe that's a program that would make sense to have a late start for funding, as opposed to basing it purely on rankings, if that makes sense. I don't know if the reviewers or YDD staff will have the ability to, to your point, Cord, the mechanics of that might be complicated, but sometimes it's not necessarily based on the, I don't want to say the quality of the proposal, but the ranking of the proposal, more so on the deliverables of the timing of the actual programs. I don't know if that's going to be a possibility. We'll cross the bridge when we come to it.
Yeah, well, I would say, and we'll talk a little bit about the RFA process here in a little bit. Bill and Abraham will do that. I would imagine, based on the way we've described how those decisions happen in the RFA, is that we would go by ranking,
okay,
and that applicants are applying because they're ready to hit go on in July, more or less. But as we get to that place, and to Cord's point, like when we come down to, okay, do we have this much money or do we have this much money? And we could make one more award. We'll, I guess, as Cord said, follow what that RFA says, because that's the basis on which folks have applied, and we can't change it up on them. But if we can look at the timing, and if the timing is such, that we can. And sometimes we can make smaller awards, like, we can't give you your full request for, because we don't quite have enough money. An organization might say, we need you can only give me 50, we need 100. And then, then we might go to the next one, and the timing also might be such that we're like, oh, great, actually they're not so
So it might be in the
desperate.
negotiation
So
phase
it's,
of Grantee.
yeah, there's
Yes, that
little
makes sense.
nuances there.
Yeah, I think that actually
Sort.
meets with the spirit of what I was talking about,
Yeah.
that potentially would be in the negotiation phase
Yeah.
as opposed to just, here's the line,
Yeah.
and, you know, I mean, I like the idea of it being based on the grantee's needs. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Brian and Eric. And the last thing I'll say about it is that, you know, I've asked our colleagues in the ODE, that their grant team that really facilitates a lot of the grant funding process, if they've got guidance yet on just what the impact of a CR would be in terms of the inner workings on the finance side. And I'm still kind of awaiting that. I think that it's in development because this is such an unusual situation. And ODE makes a lot more grants now than they ever did in the past. So it's I think there's a lot of moving parts for this, and we're going to do our best to navigate it and keep it moving. I think the good news though is that, you know, we are able to proceed with those processes in anticipation of a budget. Are there any other questions on the continuing resolution? Otherwise, I'll talk a little bit about what's in the budget. Cool.
Yeah, hey, Cord, I think we probably have maybe 5 more minutes.
Yeah.
We gotta move.
What I will just say is that to answer the question, we could celebrate because we didn't go down in our funding level. We maintain the future ready funds that we intended to bring forward for this biennium. So the number you see, we've got for the current or upcoming biennium, we have 38.6 million total in grant and aid across general funds, that's community investments, JCP, various other funds, things like re-engagement, future ready, and our federal funds are holding steady. That's essentially the permission to spend the federal grants that we receive. So it looks good in terms of grant and aid. We are continuing in the right direction. One thing that did not get carried forward was the special funding for Gresham. I know there's been discussion in Ways and Means on that. It could wind up similar to what Parsa mentioned, the budget note in the end of session bill. We are neutral on it, but Gresham is hoping to be able to continue that, and it would be added to our funds if it happens. But we're in good shape. All of our programs continue in the new biennium. And with that, I will take us quickly, if I can, to talk a little bit about strategic planning, the strategic planning update. I'll pause here and say that a lot of this actually probably relates to the Policy Rules and Research Committee. And if it makes sense in terms of time, I could just talk about this at that point because it's probably germane to that topic anyway. And then we could do whatever else we need to do on the agenda right now.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
let's do
I
that.
guess, yeah, let's do that. Sounds good to me. Do it.
I will
What's
come back to this when time allows, but I will tell you quickly about re-engagement rules. Thank you again, Council, for adopting these rules back in March. They are now submitted to Secretary of State and posted. I wanted to circle back to a question that came up when we were working on those rules in the council meeting about, you know, an additional recommending agency. There was some discussion about the impact of that. I think where we left it was, you know, we should have more conversation, and we have not done that, but I just wanted to note that that's on the radar. And I thought if we would have passed our statutory update bill, which could still happen, there'd be broad updates on our administrative rules to align with the new statutory language. If that doesn't happen, I think there's still some value in looking at the rules across the board, the rules for community investments, rules for all the different work that the council and division do. We don't have a timeline for that, but I think it would likely be a topic in strategic planning, which I'll talk about in a bit. And so my guess is that we might look again at doing rules updates as an action identified in the strategic planning process. So we might say, what do we need our rules to do differently to align with this plan, and just be really deliberate about what we would work on and who would work on it. So just to note that, you know, we don't have anything planned for new administrative rules, but I appreciated the, you know, some of the discussion last time, and I think it's something we could talk about as part of strategic planning and how we use rules to further our work. So with that, I will end my update and turn it back over to the council.
Okay. Hey, I want to try to do something to see if I can get us close to being on you know, keeping with time. And so we're supposed to have a 5-minute break, but we had like a 30-minute pre And so I'm wondering if we can do this. Let's jump to, if this is okay, the grantee spotlight. And Bill will guide us through that. And then the committee updates, right? And I'm hoping that lunch is supposed to arrive at 11:30. And if we could instead work through the youth grants update and the grantee spotlight as sort of working lunch. Is that okay? That way it'll give you a moment to get lunch. You can sneak in a little break and then we can slip. I think we'll be able to get back on time if we are close to time if we move in that way. Is that okay?
To me, the one thing is I think our grantee folks, the spotlight that's scheduled at noon is a grantee who's coming here.
I think he's talking, sorry, this is Melissa, I think he's
go,
talking about the
Melissa.
grantee spotlight video, the Adelante Mujer.
There's a video 11
Video.
that's supposed to happen at
That's
11.
at 11.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wanna watch that?
Okay.
Do it.
And then, yeah, the other grantee spotlight, they said they'll be.
And then we'll
right.
move to the committee updates, okay?
It's good to meet
All right. Bill? Sorry, no,
And you are just gonna.
I'll share it. Bill's gonna introduce it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this grantee spotlight features Adelante Mujeres, which is, and specifically their Chicas program, which operates year-round, offering culturally specific programming to ensure attendance, on track to graduate in 9th grade, completing high school, and enrolling in post-secondary education. They serve 27 schools in Washington County. So far this year, they've served over 1,000 unduplicated youth. They are the single largest youth serving grantee that we have by numbers in the Promise grant initiative. So it's with very, very proud of this agency and the work they do. And we can cue the video now. This is specifically about the college going kind of pathway and encouragement that they have.
My name is Isel Chavez Gomez, and I am the College and Career Coordinator for the Chicas program. My mom is an immigrant from Michoacan, Mexico. Growing up, I had a lot of internalized depression. I wasn't really comfortable in my own skin. I hated when the teachers would call my name because they would always mispronounce it. More than anything, I just really wanted to be white because I wanted to fit in. It wasn't really until I got to college, I took this leap of faith to really start embracing my culture and embracing my identity and pronouncing my name right. I spent 21 years mispronouncing my name. And that act alone completely changed my life. And then I just started getting mad. I just really started getting mad about, why is it that it took me 21 years to figure out who I was, to be comfortable in my skin? Why wasn't I learning this in elementary, middle, or high school? It really just fueled my passion to continue to be an advocate, a mentor to other Latinas, younger Latinas, who I see myself a lot in.
How many of you would be the first ones in your family to go to college?
Chicas is an innovative program created to empower Latina and Latinx youth across Washington County. And we start as young as 3rd grade and go all the way through college.
We're gonna go around and do a little round of introductions with everyone that's here.
When you're a first-generation student, the college process is so incredibly stressful and confusing. I took all loans. I didn't apply to a single scholarship, and I don't want you to do that. Learn from my mistakes. Chicas in College offers monthly sessions, social and emotional support, mentorship, connecting them to resources. We talk about things like imposter syndrome. Oftentimes that reason is because they are the only brown person in the room, they're the only woman in the room. That's why Chicas in College is so important, because we're a community of Latinas.
This year I've been pretending to be more confident because I've noticed that in my field, that's what I need.
Because I want to be more confident in myself. I'm trying to.
There's this overall sense of community when we come together.
Growing up, basically college was never in my mind. I was always on survival mode at an early age. It was a hard process in high school, especially because I was going through depression, and a lot of faculty and staff just only saw me as oh, you just go to community college and that's it. Despite everybody's like trying to like bring me down, I always fought back. Chicas was a way for me as a meditation, actually. To know that I'm not the only one like fighting for a dream. I was going through like my eating disorder and like I just felt so alone. But like every time I walked into that classroom, I remember I would feel like really happy, energetic. I felt like I could be me. I felt like my problems went away as soon as I stepped inside. And also it helped me a lot with like the resources, like how to apply for financial aid. That really helped me and motivated me to really come here to Western. I'm majoring in pre-education, middle high language arts to become a writing teacher.
We really just want you to feel comfortable with who you are, your identity, being Latinas, hablando inglés y español. It's really hard to grow up feeling uncomfortable in your own skin. I want young Latinas to know that they're capable of anything, that they're so loved, and that they are seen and heard and their experiences matter.
Being in Chicas, it motivated me like, oh, I do have an opportunity. No matter like the barriers I have and I face, I still can. Hopefully one day I could get that back. Like that's my goal. Keep fighting for what you dream. Risk everything you got.
I just want to say again, just to reemphasize, over 1,000 unique youth served this biennium alone.
Thank you, Phil. Okay, so I'm hoping maybe in the next 12 to 15 minutes, we can move through the committee updates. The YDC committee chairs and staff liaisons will sort of guide you through conversations around policy, rules, research, youth committee, equity, disparity. And then we can use this after that, grab lunch, and then continue forward. Okay, committee updates, please.
This is Melissa. I keep forgetting and unmuting myself. I'm so sorry. This is Melissa. First on our internal agenda, we have the Policy, Rules, and Research Committee Cord. Zan and Diana are co-chairs of that committee.
I should ask, this is Cord, I should ask permission from Zan and Diana if I can use this time to talk about the strategic planning work, since one of the things I'll note is that our committee would be the home to coordinating some of that.
I would be happy to have you present.
All right, thanks. Want to make sure I'm doing it right. I will share my screen one more time and quickly talk about strategic planning and where we're at on that. I got a brand new computer. It came in the mail today. It's charging right now. This computer knows that it's here. It's yeah, all right. Here we go. Any second now.
It's probably gonna be.
All right. Sorry, I just wanted to share once I actually have the slide up. Here it is. All right, great. Well, again, Cord Bucher, Deputy Director, YDD. So we talked a little bit about strategic planning last time. I've got a little more detail for folks today. The current strategic plan is turning 2. We brought it to the council in its first state, worked with the council on it in spring of 2021. It was discussed at council in the June and then again September meetings. We've carried out a lot of work. Many actions are complete. Some is still moving, and there are some things that we want to look at with you to figure out if they still make sense. And of course, there's a lot of new things we might want to do. So, the YDC Policy, Rules, and Research Committee. We spoke at the last committee meeting about whether that would be the appropriate place to sort of host the strategic planning work. Of course, all council members would be welcome to participate. We would just make sure that folks are aware of when that committee meets. We've generally scheduled quarter to quarter, but one of my goals will be to work with Melissa to schedule the committee meetings out through this process, to essentially get them all on the calendar through the timeline, so that folks can see if they're available for those. I see some applause, so that
Yes.
we have an approximate timeline that we've developed, which we did to kind of align with something we've talked about, the governor's expectations for agencies. They include a number of different expectations of agencies to take various actions or produce, proof of different kinds of work. One of those expectations is that every agency has a strategic plan, and another is that every agency has a diversity, equity, and inclusion plan. And those two things are linked in those expectations. We actually had to provide, if not our DEI plan, then a plan for a DEI plan last week, which we did. And I think because of the unique way that YDD operates, working closely with a council, we're a little different from other agencies that might just be able to do these things unilaterally. And so we've tried to develop a timeline that involves the council in a process of developing what Brian and I have at least tentatively called an equity framework alongside the next strategic planning process. The plan then would include developing that framework, and that would help to guide our strategic plan and be embedded within it. There is a report we did for the governor's office on essentially the work we did in the current strategic plan around equity, things like creating the Equity and Disparity Committee, different actions that we took that were really guided by equity principles. But this would be a more intentional way of really taking the equity lens that was developed by the Equity and Disparity Committee and trying to apply it in a more upfront way to our strategic planning process and different aspects of our work. So the next steps for strategic planning, one, got to discuss that equity framework with the YDC Equity Committee. Since it's brand new and we have a lot going on, I'm sure we'll be hearing soon about the work being done on our grant RFAs. I haven't even had a chance to talk with my colleagues who staff the Equity Committee about what we developed to report to the governor's office. But essentially, I'm going to request permission of the Equity Committee to come and present to them on this and talk about how they might support our work in developing this aspect of strategic planning. We're going to firm up a timeline. I will show you in the next slide the timeline that we've shared. We know that it is subject to variation, and a big factor is going to be the onboarding of new council members, working with the governor's office to bring new members on. I know Brian will talk about that. We also have folks terming off, and we know that everyone's schedules are complex. But I'll share that timeline and be happy to hear feedback. We're not trying to finalize it today, but just share what our thinking is right now. Once we do have a timeline established, which we will do and work on with the Policy Rules and Research Committee, we'll start planning in that committee a strategic planning retreat. I'll go to the next slide and just show you this timeline because it actually talks about a little more of the aspects of the work that would happen. So again, the equity framework concept, the strategic planning, planning, a lot of plans to plan. The governor's office is actually, my understanding is they've got facilitators for strategic planning that we could essentially tap their list and bring someone in and bypass the more complex procurement process of having to do a contract solicitation and that whole timeline. So we've looked at that as well. In the timeline we've come up with, we would like to try and do a retreat with council in November if possible. The benefit of doing it then was that we could bring a draft plan to the council that would be developed with the council to look at in the December meeting, and then do some work in early 2024, just bringing this out to some of our grantees and other community stakeholders, finalizing everything, and then bringing it to the council for final adoption in March. That's the timeline that we've worked on. Certainly, we're open to feedback on that. And I will stop there. That's what I've got.
Questions or comments?
Thank you, Cord. I know there are other reports, right? We have about 10 minutes, so.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Cord.
We could hear from equity and disparity. Jared,
Yes.
if you have time before
Yep,
you have
and I
to
was
come
gonna say
on.
that.
And
Okay,
Bill.
Is there anyone on the Equity and Disparity Committee who would like to? I don't know if there was anyone who was able to attend the last, we actually didn't hold the last meeting because of low attendance. So I can give the update if there's no one from the committee who would like to. But basically, if you recall, last council meeting, we approved the equity lens and the land acknowledgement guidance. So that was a major accomplishment, kind of the first hurdle for the committee to sort of establish what we're doing. We've moved to quarterly meetings, and the last meeting was scheduled for 2 weeks ago, and we got in and realized that there was low attendance, so we didn't hold the meeting. So there really haven't been too many updates since then. But the next steps really are to convene again as a committee and figure out what the next priorities are moving forward. And as Cord mentioned, some work there that will kind of happen in tandem with the policy and research committee. But yeah, just kind of establishing what the next goals are and moving forward. So not a ton there.
Hey, Paul, this is Jeff. It sounds like our next steps are already laid out for us. So thanks, Cord, and on the strategic plan. That sounds like great work. And on behalf of the Equity and Disparity Committee, I think that's work that we would be really excited about jumping into.
Great, that's it for you. Perfect. The youth committee, so Abraham and Maricela both in person.
Talk a little bit about that. We kind of had a meet and greet, honestly, is what it was, where we all kind of executive met with each other. So we had never ever met in person, and our youth committee member Janelle was also able to attend, and it was really inspiring actually. Everyone visited to the informal part of it once we actually got all together in the room, and we just started chatting really about the work that everyone's doing, kind of the needs, what are they thinking about going, and it started just organically turned into this talk where I think we all shared a little bit about ourselves and kind of how we got into our work a little bit, and also kind of ideas. It was really just brainstorming, right? And I think everyone came away from that meeting like, well, when do we meet again? Very eager to continue, what we got going, the ball, because it taken a while to really get us all together in a room with various different challenges. But once we got there, I know these committee members were all very thankful, but I know me as staff as well as thankful to be able to share that space with them as well, right? So I mean, that's kind of what I came up with. I don't know if you want to share a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was really just an opportunity to, like you said, meet everybody in person and do like more natural introductions so that they feel like they actually know us. And I noticed no one is here. Kiwi or Andy are not, right? Sure. I don't think so. And so we talked a little bit about like the troubles getting them to be able to participate, just because like they're in school during the day, and then like the requirements, there's just a lot of obstacles. And so we find that, moving forward, we want to be able to meet them at McLaren as much as possible. So we have our quarterly meetings scheduled, if I'm not mistaken, all in person except for one hybrid in December, depending on weather. Yeah, and I think our meeting went really well. I think we all have like a lot of hopes and ideas and everything, and we're hoping to get more youth on the council. And I let them know that, we need a new, somebody to lead the youth committee that's closer to their age group. And so hopefully that will be coming soon. Janelle, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think it was just a very, we talked about, like, just like juvenile justice and mental health, and we didn't really have anything specific that we talked about, but I think we all came away like just knowing a little bit more, having some different perspectives.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was really nice. Just, we talked about mental health, we talked about like a little bit about housing, foster care, we talked about everything. And so it was really great just to have like a deeper conversation. Yeah.
It was great.
All right. Wow.
I'll just say, we do say thanks, and I know Carlos is here as our, we have our non-voting
Ex
council,
officio.
ex officio members, but I know that Maricela and our committee members and Abe all worked hard to come together, and I know it was really critical to have Carlos, who's here with OIA, Rocky too, I'm sure, to help kind of work the channels behind the scenes to make that member gathering happen. So kudos to the folks who made it and attended and participated in the conversation, and then for those working on our behalf behind the scenes, we appreciate it.
We're just glad to be part of the process. Yeah.
Thanks.
Can I just, not to put you on the spot, but I'll put you on the spot. Brian, I think it would be wonderful if we could actually have a youth development council meeting at McLaren, and the reason I'm bringing this up is I have participated in things in that big conference room at McLaren, specifically thinking about Director O'Leary teaches, he's an adjunct professor at Lewis and Clark, and he teaches juvenile law. And so several years in a row, he's invited me and one of my employees to go and be a guest instructor for the class, and it's held in that large
The Tom Nelson room, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, it's really not fun having to go through the screening process, but the cause is worth it, like, you know, to get through the gatehouse. But it was just so incredible because the young people that are participating in that class that live at McLaren and also at Oak Creek, that were brought up. And then the Lewis and Clark students, and then some folks like me that come in as guests for various reasons. It was really powerful to be together and have that. Joe makes it very interactive, and Director O'Leary, and just to be able to be together. And so when I think about the youth members who are living in other places and they can't physically be in the room with us, if we could ever just say, okay, we're all willing, you know, don't wear your heavy metal outfits that those days. Leave your knives and your guns in the car. If we could all just commit to, like, we really want to be inclusive of these young people and be able to have the meeting there, I just think it would be so wonderful. I got to meet Andy. He came up to me during the break from that, during that class, and said, hey, you know, he was excited to meet me in person, and I was excited to meet him in person. And I just think it would really be great for all of us to do that. And then maybe even put in a tour of what's going on there, because not everybody's had that experience, and I think there's a lot of preconceived notions about what a youth correctional facility is or isn't, and getting to experience that live and get to talk to young people, I think would really be powerful. So anyway.
Yeah.
So I just saw the two of you sitting next to each other. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I think it's a great idea. I think, and right here, 2 days meeting, we would really like to have Kiwi and Andy on the Zoom or whatever, but that it's a challenge and didn't happen today. But knowing our committee was there just a couple of weeks ago, I think it's a great idea. That we don't have to meet in this room. It's 15 minutes from here, or 20, or whatever, right? Like we could definitely make that happen. I support that 100%.
That's great. Yeah. And it's free parking as well. There is that benefit. And Christina, to your point of doing a tour, providing a tour at facilities like McLaren is a common business practice for us, like that we bring folks in from the community and we showcase the different programs that we have taking place throughout that particular facility, our largest facility in the state. So adding to those types of tours and bringing in folks to participate in the youth council meetings there in McLaren, I think is totally feasible. I know that both Director O'Leary as well as Dan Berger, superintendent, are very supportive of that, as well as our new facility services assistant director, Janet McClellan. So I think that that's something that we could work on arranging to take place.
This is Melissa. I just wanted to note that Pedro Perez was in touch this morning trying to get Andy into the meeting, and it apparently hasn't worked yet because I haven't seen them be able to join. But their efforts were being made. We're trying to get them access. And I'm just gonna shout out to Joy Snyder on our staff because she's the one who made the arrangements with your folks to get the youth members able to meet there.
Awesome job, Joy.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much.
Super. All right. What are we doing now?
So what we're doing now, I did not want to stop because the reason we are here is because of youth. And when the conversation turns to them, cannot stunt it. But if we could use this moment to see if it's possible that people could grab, I see the lunches are in the background. I'm very envious of it. If we could just use the 10 minutes to grab the lunches. If you need to use the bathroom, come and sit down. And then I will try to reconvene us at about 11:53, I think, so that the youth grants update folk can have everything queued up and ready to go. So if you could queue that up while all this is happening so that we can just get started. So please use the bathroom, grab your lunch, come back to your seat, and then we'll see if we can catch up, make sure we can stay on track or get on track. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sabiti.
Okay, everyone, we're going to get started. And we are going to.
All right, here we go. We're going to get started. Sabiti's calling us back to order.
Thank you, Brian, so much. And so if Bill and Abram, if you're ready, can we proceed with the youth grants update? People continue to eat, and then we'll continue through the grantee spotlight as well. Okay.
Get started?
Yep.
You ready?
Yeah.
All right.
We're going to call up the presentation.
Yes,
I don't know, Melissa, I
yes,
think you're going to have to do that one.
That's right. Thank you. On track.
We'll share it. Last chance to make noise. Open chips. Unwrap your sandwich.
I can't quite see what's happening, but.
We're just trying to get the presentation up.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right.
You're good. Yeah. All right, good. Why don't you go forward one more time?
That's court.
Yeah, so we're forward several.
Spotlight, you have that?
There we go. I think you can go more. I don't know. Abe and Bill, take it away. Unless do you want the previous slide?
No.
No. Okay. We know who you are, but introduce yourselves for the record. All right, here we go. Officially.
All right, thank you. Bill Hansel, Youth Policy Analyst. We're gonna, as you can see, review some of updates, share some data on the current 2023-25 RFA. The slide you see before you is all applications and across all grant types. Total amount requested is approximately $78.5 million this biennium. There was 53 million requested in community investments, 12 million requested in the re-engagement opportunity grant, and then 13 million in future ready requests. The applications, the way it broke down, 297 applications in our community investment grant, 48 in re-engagement opportunity grant, and 57 in future ready, for a total of 402 applications. By way of comparison, that is 71 more grants in the community investment, 12 more grants than the previous biennium in re-engagement, and then the 57 in future ready are we haven't had a full biennium, so.
Do you mean more applicants or more grants?
Applicants, yeah. We're talking applicants here because we obviously haven't awarded yet.
Yeah,
So,
just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
The applicants.
Yes. And the amount requested is over $8 million more than last biennium in the community investment side alone. The next slide, if we advance, this breaks down the community investment side specifically across those initiatives with Promise, Solutions, and workforce and violence and gang prevention. You can see the bulk is in Promise at request of 33.7 million. The next largest was in our workforce with 10.9, nearly 11 million. Solutions at 6.6 million, and then nearly 2 million in violence and gang prevention. Again, you can see the bar graph shows you the application breakdown, 167 in Promise, 60 in Solutions, 53 in workforce, and 17 in violence and gang prevention.
Hence the request for all the reviewers that we saw.
Yes, speaking of which,
makes sense, yeah.
I'll pass it over to Abe.
So for the record, Abraham Magana, Youth Community Investment Grant Manager and Policy Analyst. And next slide. There we are. So there you can kind of see a visual there of the spread of applications across the state by county. For some reason, I don't know why the number didn't come up there on Multnomah, but the Multnomah is 116. You can see there's a couple there, or three actually there where we didn't receive applications. So we'll probably do some follow-up there after we get there, but that was in Gilliam, Sherman, and Wheeler. Didn't receive any applications from that area. Speaking of kind of reviewers, to give you an idea of reviewers where we're at right now, we have a total of 87 reviewers. And so it's been quite a lot there. Of those reviewers, 5 are staff. So.
Just note, Abe, I don't know if folks realize this, those who are maybe applying for applications, so we've broken the state up into, and somebody remind me, I think it's 11 or 12 different regions, 11 regions, and we have applications from all 11 regions.
Yes.
Which is, we're excited about, and as we do kind of the regional award process, we'll definitely award to all of the regions across the state. And to the point, in the past, there've definitely been biennia where we may have not gotten applications from certain counties. To have 33 of 36 feels really good. This little, 3-county area that we didn't get applications from, we'll dive in and see what we can learn. We certainly, obviously, as I think everybody knows, we do our JCP grants, which cover all 36 counties. So one way, shape, or form, dollars will flow to every county and obviously the 9 federally recognized tribes. But we feel good about having hit all the regions, having hit 33 of 36 counties. There's some areas, that kind of southeastern Oregon, for example, to see 4, I think that's now New York County, maybe Lake County down there has 1, so to have applications from some of those places where even in the last biennium, and Bill and Abe can speak to this, like where we may not have gotten any, but to get one in some of those places is better than none, and so we're excited about that.
I would add to that, if we could lay over the regional map, which was complex to do, we have representation in all 11 regions. So even those 3 counties, and incidentally, we did just a quick analysis on those, and I think those are the 3 least populated by population in the state, county-wise. I think Lake and Harney may, but that's something there. I also just wanted to point out, if we could go back 2 slides, Melissa, I thought it was an interesting comparison when we looked at our total requested funds up there of 78.5 million. That exceeds our grant and aid best estimates by 40 million. So we have double the request this biennium than we actually have grant and aid funds. So that just shows you, I think it really speaks to the need that is out there and the growing awareness of YDO. And hopefully that will motivate legislators to provide additional funds in future bienniums.
And I would just add that it speaks to the need, it also speaks to the great work that staff did with the community forums and outreach, so thank you all for that work. I know that was a huge undertaking, a lot of travel, days on the road, but obviously that, I would say this is a product of that great outreach, so thank you.
Exactly.
We're gonna move on, but real quick, wanted to see if there were any additional questions about the RFA numbers that have been presented so far.
Yeah, I was just, I have a little sidebar. This is Eric Cardella, council member. I was speculating that I wonder how many of those 116 in Multnomah County actually have a statewide or a multi-county reach. Could you speak to that at all? Not to answer the question, but just whether anecdotally in the past we've had situations where we have maybe a metro located organization that actually does serve multiple geographic areas.
Yeah, great question, thank you. That has in fact happened in the past. It is not common. You know, it may be, off the top of my head, I want to say less than 5 of that 116. I can only confidently speak to knowledge of one that's occurring where they operate out of Portland, but we're serving youth in Ontario, Oregon as well. We won't really, just to clarify too, these are applications. And there's processes underway where minimum qualifications will reduce the numbers that advance to review. So this is just what was submitted, not what will make it to review. But the next round, when we're actually making awards, we'll have a much greater understanding of who's been found, you know, who the reviewers have awarded, and we'll be able to, you know, dig deeper a little bit, like, okay, you know, but within it, when we made that county map, it includes those, again, like maybe somebody serving Lake County is actually located in Klamath County. But wherever they listed they were gonna serve you is where we drop in.
Thank you for that clarification. So it's not just
number.
based on their mailing address.
That's right.
Okay, great.
So some of those on the Eastern Oregon side may actually, their parent organization may be in the valley.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Yeah.
Well, and for the next slide here, this kind of gives you a snapshot of where we are in regards to our timeline and what we set out to do when we started kind of going through this whole grant process. You can see there's the RFA development process, the visiting, going to visiting the state, having talks, the launch, and then opening, which we're all very happy, and then kind of informing everyone during our pre-application. So those are done, those all got checked. And now we're in the middle of that evaluation stage right now. You know, Jessica, Paul, and you know, all the reviewers who are volunteering for this undertaking, we're in it right now. And it's been pretty intense, I'll say, trying to get in reviewers and plugging in sales, that person can, conflict of interest, working with procurement, which has been amazing as well. So that's been great. And then next, we're just waiting for July, to let people know, notify, about their intent to be awarded. And then after that, grant agreements, and then the full development of understanding, understanding if there's any needed clarification in regards to what was in the application, or just dotting i's and crossing t's, if you will. But that'll be in the summer and fall, and that's when we hope to be able to get programming going and begin funding.
Ready for the next slide?
I think so. I think that's it.
That's it? Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Brian, would you like us to dive into the youth grants data update? It looks like it was, or hold off on that.
We should probably, unless from a youth grant standpoint, is everybody, I was checking with Jared about something, so is everybody's clear and there are no questions? We'll stop that piece. Did want to do a quick kind of data update based on some pieces from the last council meeting, so I think we can move to that unless there are more questions.
Can I just clarification? I know that Cord talked about the continuing resolution.
Yeah.
So this process, people will be notified in early July.
Yeah.
And this will be under the continuing resolution, but yeah, so they might not be able to actually receive funding for that.
Well, we would be able to, I think, and Cord can help with that question too, but sort of commit to, we can pay you with our continuing resolution funds, but beyond that, until we have a new continuing resolution, there's this chance, so we can only commit to paying with the funds that we have. In fact, when we do these intents to award, we often too will say, this is contingent upon just funding from the legislature generally. So this is contingent on funding from the continuing resolution and this quarter and beyond. I don't know exactly what the language will say, but yes, we'll have to add some of that language, and have people have that understanding.
The grants are reimbursement based, right? So
Yeah.
we wouldn't pay them anyways until the year.
Yes, in some situations, if there's an organization that's asking for kind of initial startup funding,
Yeah.
they might get money a little bit more earlier up front. But for the most part, those folks are just getting reimbursement based, which can happen, later in the fall, October-ish timeframe. Hopefully things will be figured out by then. But yes, there's a little bit of time for things, but we need those approvals from the legislature, whether it's for the full budget, the continuing resolution, or whatever it might be, and we'll just work that into the language.
Right, so I mean, the practical reality of
Yeah.
that, for example, other nonprofits I've worked with over the years, they will probably not just feel comfortable hiring, onboarding folks, and then, that could maybe happen during that time, right? But before September 15th, and then that whole scariness of, wait a minute, what if it can't get done? So I think the practical reality would be that this will have an impact on the ability to roll out the actual services to youth and families and communities.
Yeah.
It's going to have an impact.
Yeah.
Not through any fault of you, of the
but
staff and all the hard work going on.
not
It is what it is.
This is Zan Oshiro speaking. I wanted to say that I know that the intent of the legislature is hopefully to end the session sine die, and then to have the governor call a special session immediately, because the intent is to try and pass the budget by July 1st. And fingers crossed that happens. But we're hearing the same thing from community-based organizations all across Benton County, that they are all, in limbo land. We have homeless shelters closing, which is going to be horrible and counter to the governor's executive order, just because they don't have operational funds to move forward.
Yeah, it's scary for those. Thanks for bringing that up. Important point.
All right. I think slide 20.
Okay.
Tabidi, we're gonna quickly, there was one other piece that we just wanted to update around, kind of research and data. From our youth grants team.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure there was time for the youth grantee spotlight, so.
Yes, and they're here and it's coming.
And that's next steps, right?
Yeah.
Bill? Okay.
Yes. Can you, or Melissa, you're working on it?
Is it showing? Okay.
Yeah, I think you can go to the next one.
All right, very quickly, Bill Hansel, Youth Development Policy Analyst. This is kind of just tying up what was when we presented data at the last council meeting. Currently, we're in the process of finalizing our data collection tool, both the expenditure report and what's called the data report. We've been able to conduct surveys with our grantees, and we're basing changes to these often on the feedback that we've received, and then just general kind of continual improvement processes. What we're looking for is consistency in data reporting across grant types, so that an agency that may have 3 different awards across 3 different grant types, which is possible, each one doesn't look foreign, look completely different. So we make a concerted effort to make our data reporting consistent across all grant types. And then the other feedback and important thing is what the time we're putting in now is so that once it's released, it will be stable across the biennium. So there's not, oh, sorry, Q3 would like to change, what you need to report or collect. And so we're confident that we'll be able to offer a data collection that will then be consistent from day 1 through the close of the biennium. Molly?
Yep, Molly Burns, Grant Manager and Policy Analyst for Reengagement. And so following up on those tools that we're developing, we're working with the grant management team in terms of when grantees are reporting on a consistent basis, because the goal is, as we've done for the last 2 March YDC meetings, is to bring that high level data summary to the council each March. And so in terms of next steps following that, the topic on data, assessing current capacity and the plan for the future will be brought to the fall Policy Rules and Research Committee meeting, and really hoping to kind of dig into data research vision as a part of that strategic planning process.
Perfect. Yeah, just wanted to make sure you all knew that we continue to, the staff are doing great work around this, and we'll keep pushing forward, and I think it'll be a big part of our plan. So that's that. Don't want to spend any other time unless there are questions.
Yeah.
Tabidi?
Yeah, I want to thank everyone for, really being so brief and conscientious. I really appreciate that. I know people work really hard for these reports, and so I apologize for the rush, but I appreciate your willingness to do so. Okay, so grantee spotlights, Jared, and we'll introduce Henny. So
great. All right, thank you. Well, we are very lucky for our next.
All right. I don't know, Melissa, do we have any?
We have one guest
signed up
who
for-
has said that they don't have any public comments, so I think we can pass on to the next part.
okay.
Awesome. Tabidi, should I just kind of
Yes.
wrap us up? I mean,
Roll
on
on.
my part,
You're driving.
I'll try. All right, so just a few points from me, I guess both sort of in wrap up, but just the quickest of director's reports, I mean, we hit a lot of some of the main messages, like around the continuing resolution and the budget, and Cord covered that, but I just wanted to make sure folks were aware of that. Another quick update, I was a part of the Oregon Department of Education director interviews, and we helped to narrow that down to a couple of candidates, and I understand from the governor's office that there are going to be some interviews, I think next week, with the governor. We interviewed 3 people, and I'm not exactly sure if they just are gonna bring all 3 of those to the governor, or maybe 2 of the 3, or 1 of the 3, but I know interviews happening in the coming week. But that was a great process to be a part of as a member of the Oregon Department of Education executive team. And so we were right there along with other members of the department, talking to those folks. And the ODE has been great about involving me and other members of the team in their work and their leadership and committees, et cetera, et cetera. So the relationship there is as strong as ever. And want to continue that with the new agency director once that is decided. Also, Cord mentioned as a part of the strategic planning that there's some expectations that agencies have around the planning piece and the DEI pieces. So we'll continue to push forward on the expectations that the governor laid out and are making good progress in that regard. Having submitted our DEI kind of plan for the plan, that was an expectation we needed to have completed by the end of May, and we did that. Also want to mention 2 other things. The sovereign nation funding concept is something we continue to explore. We haven't yet pulled together the work group, but we were just with the RFA and so many other things going on, we figured let's get through this spring and then we'll pull that work group together, I think in the summer, probably in some ways building on some of the work already happening in the Equity and Disparity Committee. So stay tuned for that. But know that we continue to have conversations. Paul wasn't able to be here at today's meeting, but Paul and I are traveling next week to meet with 3 or 4 different tribal nations. Jessica knows how many? 4, thank you. So I'll be on the road a few days next week, visiting Siletz, and Kukwel, and Grand Ronde, and also Siti Kusi, which is the Confederated Tribes of the Lower Umpqua and Siuslaw Indian Reservation. So that's a long one. We will meet with those folks and excited to do that next week. And then also one grant initiative that we haven't spent much time on, but I just wanted to make sure that it was clear to everyone, like the community schools grants, right, which are around a total of $100,000, I think, each biennium. That's a sort of legacy grant. It is included in the budget. We will continue to do those pass-through. They're essentially pass-through. I mean, we don't put major requirements on it, but there are 5 schools that each get 20 grand. We will continue doing that in this next biennium. We keep the process super minimal and super low, and we haven't seen those funds increase, but we haven't seen them decrease either in the budget. So we will continue to do community schools as we've done in the past, and just didn't want that to get lost. But wanted the council to be aware that community schools will continue with the 5 schools. Don't have them all committed to memory, but with the $20,000 awards, we'll have to navigate how to exactly do that, right, with the continuing resolution piece, but generally speaking, that grant program will continue. So those were my quick, director's update things. Just great, I know we were rushed and started late, so I appreciate everybody kind of helping us make up time. And we will be in touch, around strategic planning and getting that stuff moving in the fall. And the other topic, I don't know if recruitment, is that on my list or is that the other topic here? Probably on this side. Maybe I'll ask Melissa, I don't know, we have not a ton of time, it's the top of the hour, but just know that Melissa has some information she wants to share about terms and whose terms are either up or due, and we know we it's sort of a plea, but also we'll work with the executive committee to really push hard on a recruitment effort later this summer and fall so that we can get folks lined up ideally in advance of the strategic planning process. There are a few candidates that I've spoken to really coming out of the community engagement work we did in the fall. But I said to Tabidi, when he and I were checking in the other day, like now I think we've got a little bit more space this summer to actually, work. I have more time, frankly, to put some time and energy into really recruiting folks that ultimately go to the governor's office to be approved. But if we bring a list or a slate of 7, 8 people, they're pretty easy to work with to make that happen. But I would hope and think that by the fall we'd be adding, 5 or so people, could be a little bit more. Melissa, do you want to talk a little bit about terms and then we'll answer questions?
Yes, and that reminds me, if Karen is still on the meeting, Karen, are you still here? It was Karen's last, she is, it's Karen's last
here, yes, I
council
made it.
meeting. So thank you, Karen.
My pleasure.
Do you have any words, write a speech for us?
I don't have any words. I'm just so excited about all the progress we've been able to make through a pandemic, no less, and the direction of where things are headed. And it was so wonderful to hear about the farm, and it just warms my heart to know that we are doing good and that we're having the results that we want to have. So I'm gonna get all teary-eyed. I will miss you. I look forward to staying on top of the news of what's happening next.
Thank you, Karen.
We'll miss you through the strategic planning process,
Yes.
Karen. Thank you for your leadership.
For sure. If I can share the term information in the follow-up email with actual numbers,
Yeah.
and then be in touch with the individuals and do it that way.
Does that make sense? How many people, do you have like general, like how many people are, terms are up?
I think it's gonna be more than 7, so we might have to do a little bit more recruitment.
That's fine.
Right, because we are at 20 members right now, so some will be renewing terms, which are the 4-year terms, and then some will be terming off.
Okay.
Yeah, probably about that time.
Okay, so work to be done. I said, my bottom line is, and you can reach out to me and talk to me offline, we don't need to do this now, but I would love for each council member to put some thought into 1 or 2 people at least that you feel like would be great to talk to. They don't have to be they're a for sure thing, but just a couple of people that you think would make for good potential additions. It might also be just somebody who you think may have some other connections, that works too. I think that they would have to take a few steps, apply to be a member. That happens online. We can send them the link. We have a couple pager that sort of talks about kind of what the council is and what the broad expectations are. So happy to share that resource. Melissa could do that post meeting so that you're like, oh, if you need to pass something along to somebody, you've got a kind of quick overview. Yeah, I don't know. What other questions do you have or thoughts? No questions.
It would be great if we could get that 2-pager,
Yeah.
start using it.
Yep, easy.
Are there, I know we haven't begun our new strategic planning process, but are there strategic gaps in representation geographically, programmatically, sector-wise that we should be considering?
To the extent that we can add people outside of the valley, outside of Columbus Valley would be really helpful. I think increasing the number of young people, and by that, given our designation as the state advisory group, like people under 28, technically speaking, because that's the way the federal government determines young. So folks who are under 28 and have an interest in the work, lived experience and or just a real passion around youth work and youth services. So young, outside of the valley, I think would be 2 things. We do want somebody from the judiciary. We've worked on that. Anya and I have been Anya particularly has been part of some conversations with the, or in judicial department about that and juvenile delinquency improvement project effort where we're saying, hey, find somebody for us, right? We had a retired judge from the Salem area for Judge Abernathy for so many years. So judiciary would be great. I think we need law enforcement, right? Chief Teague, we had a couple of folks who, a couple of years ago, who were on the cusp, but then, you know, for whatever reason, didn't follow through with the actual application, but law enforcement representative would be great too. So those are a few. Great.
Liz has a question or comment.
Liz?
Yeah, my question was just about, and the 2-pager will be helpful, and I'm curious if the 2-pager includes some of the specific supports for young people in order to attend. Like I just couldn't remember if there's compensation. I believe there is, but if that can just be lined out, because we're starting a process now for hiring for peer educators for our organization, and we have like 20+ applications. We can only hire like 2, and they are all really incredible young folks. We're starting interviews next week. So it just feels like a real opportunity to mention it, perhaps if there
That's a good point.
Folks that I will be connecting with in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, the kind of 2-pager doesn't go into specifics around that, Liz, but I think that's something we can, maybe in the effort to get the overview out quickly, we can send you what we've got. But we do need to do some work, and I just had a conversation with somebody from the Systems of Care Advisory Committee about how they're paying youth stipends and other compensation. So we've got to put some of those tools in place, in short, but we've got some good information and have some tools from another council that I want to push forward. So the short answer is we have the ability to compensate and reimburse for things, and want to do that particularly for our youth members. So that we can say that we need to build the tools out, but I agree. That's I think the way in which we can probably get folks to really
Even if a 2-pager or whatever it is could
just
say youth members could be compensated,
yeah,
contact form.
That's easy to add. Yep.
Great.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, great question.
Okay.
Anything else? I know we're a couple minutes over, or more than a few,
We're about 8 minutes over, so.
That's it for me.
Okay, so thank you all. Thank you everyone for being so patient and kind of rushing things a bit. So at this moment, I'd like to just adjourn this meeting, and thank you all for coming, and we'll see you at the next meeting, September 14th.
Thanks, Tabidi.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Tabidi.